There we go. Hey, everybody. My name is Nathan Smith, and I'm the Digital Programming Coordinator here at the Central Arkansas Library System. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today's class is Surf Secure. We're going to talk about online safety and some of the tools and common sense techniques you can use to keep yourself safe online. As always, before we get rolling, I just want to point out there are a lot of cool virtual programs happening here at CALS, not just technology classes. So if you want to find out what those might be, head to cals.org, move your mouse over events, click on find an event online to see all of the classes, or excuse me, all of the events listed out. And if you're looking for technology classes, other technology classes, I'm definitely happy to have you anytime. And you can find those by moving your mouse over events on cals.org and clicking technology classes. Pretty straightforward. So, come on down anytime you want. Definitely happy to have you for any of these classes. And I hope you enjoy this one. Other kind of preliminary things I like to get out of the way before we start. If at any point during the class you have questions, please let me know. Don't worry about whether it's a silly question or any of that kind of stuff. I'm not in the business of judging that. My job is to teach technology classes. And you know what? Technology classes are about learning things about technology that are useful. And so if you're learning useful things about technology, even if there are things that I or someone else who's joining us already knows, then that's a successful class. And even if I don't get to finish, even if I don't get to everything that I plan to get to during the course of the class, it's a successful class if you're able to get your questions answered and you come away knowing more and having a lot of useful information about technology, rather than just me going through a whole outline and being like, oh, hey, there we go. I finished the class and no one knows what I'm talking about. So if you have questions, if you need clarification about something I said, if you want to add something, please let me know. If you're joining me here in Zoom, down at the bottom of the screen, if you're on a computer, you should see a little toolbar. There will be a microphone for mute and the little stop video or the little video button. I guess y'all won't have that since this is a webinar. But you'll see a bunch of little icons down here at the bottom of the screen, including a chat button. If you click the chat button, you'll get a little chat box and you can type in your questions and press enter and send them right to me, and we'll make sure that they get addressed. If you're joining me in Zoom on a mobile device, it's pretty easy to chat that way too. Excuse me. What you'll need to do is tap on the center of the screen or somewhere close to the center of the screen, and you'll see a little more button at the top. Tap on that, or it could be at the bottom. Tap on that, you'll see a menu, and in that menu will be the chat option. Tap on that and type in your question, and I'll see it. If you're joining me on Facebook or YouTube Live, you can also send in questions that way. On Facebook, of course, just put your questions in the comments and I'll see those. On YouTube, put your questions in the live chat box that's right next to the video here. So, oh, and one other thing, if we have technical difficulties, which doesn't happen super often these days, but is definitely a possibility, then please let me know about that. If you are not seeing what I screen share, my presentation that I'm going to be using during class, or if my camera or my microphone goes out, please let me know. That way we can make the best use of our class time and ensure that you don't miss anything. All right, let's get to it. So I'm going to turn on the screen share and we will get started. All right, there we go. So This class is Surf Secure. We're going to be talking about online safety. One of the things that I always like to say, toward the beginning of this class is, a lot of people, particularly if they didn't grow up with as much technology, well, who did, honestly, but a lot of people, maybe if they're not as comfortable with technology, or maybe if technology wasn't as big a part of their lives growing up as it was for someone my age or a little bit younger, perhaps, a lot of folks in that situation have sometimes have difficulty feeling feeling very secure using certain types of technology, particularly, internet related stuff. Maybe they're like, well, I don't want to put my credit card number in the computer because then it'll get stolen, or they tend to be very cautious about about surfing the web, or just different things like that, and because it sort of feels a little bit foreign and kind of out of their control to a certain extent. And the first thing that I want to try and do in a class like this is I want to kind of, I want to make a comparison to essentially like real life, to offline life. In offline life, of course, there are things that are unpredictable. Most things in our lives, honestly, are out of our control, and but we don't stop living our lives. We don't stop, just because there's a possibility that someone could break into our house someday. We don't stop going to work, at least if we're going to work in person, and just because there's a possibility that lightning might strike, doesn't mean we don't, doesn't mean we don't drive somewhere, or when we need to get somewhere else. So, there are things you can do to avoid, sort of making it easy, or making it more likely that you will run into a problem. For example, with your home, if you leave your home and your doors are all unlocked, and maybe one of them's a little bit open, and you just go off to to the coffee shop or whatever, there's a good chance when you well, not a very good chance, honestly, depending on where you are, but there's a chance that somebody might notice that and walk in and start taking things from your house. But if you lock your doors when you leave and you have an alarm system, you're less likely to be the target of something like that. And so it's not foolproof. Putting an alarm system on your house doesn't mean you never have to worry about about anyone walking in and stealing your TV. But it does mean that that you're less likely to be a target. You're not low-hanging fruit for someone, for someone's sort of malicious intentions, perhaps. So the internet is the same way. There are some, if you take some common sense measures, and you are smart, and I mean street smart, not if you're if you know 6 languages, and if you just and if you just are mindful of where you are and what's going on around you and what people are saying, you are way less likely to be the victim of some sort of cybersecurity issue, identity theft, all those sorts of things. So let's talk about some of the basic. Let's talk about some of the basic common sense things you can do, and some of the tools that you can use to keep yourself safe online. So one technique to be mindful of that a lot of scammers use to try and get your information or get you to give up something that that you shouldn't necessarily, is what's called social engineering. Social engineering is a technique that basically, excuse me, that basically preys on your emotions as a human being. We all have emotions. They're a very important part of what makes us human. But one of the things about them is they can be manipulated. And if we make emotional decisions online, a lot of times that, well, sometimes at least, that can lead to problems. So this is an example of a social engineering scheme right here, above the words social engineering on the screen. Let me zoom in a little bit and I'll show you this email. So this is an example of an email. This is not a real email, and it's not exactly how it would be structured, but you can get a good idea of what's going on based on by looking at this. So this is from grandson to grandma. Subject: help, house flooded. Hi, grandma. We had a pipe break and have to stay at in a hotel for the next few weeks. Any chain, whoops, you could help us cover the cost. It would be easiest if you just send it directly to my bank account, number 123456789. Love, your grandson. So if someone were actually trying to pull this scam on you, they probably would put the name of a real grandchild rather than love, your grandson, because that seems pretty tellingly generic. And of course, up here, you would have real email addresses. And the idea behind this is pretty simple. If you were a grandparent and you received this, and you received an email like this that seemed to be from your grandchild, then you might be tempted to be like, oh, anything you need. And so you could, and because you're concerned about your grandchild, obviously. So you open up your online banking, or you go to the bank and you do you do an electronic transfer, and you send money to this account number that they've given you here. But of course, this is social engineering. This is a scam designed to make you feel desperate to help a family member in need, and to act on that quickly, on that emotional decision, to help them out as soon as possible. And so if you were to make this transfer, what would actually happen is the scammers would receive a nice sum of money equivalent to however much you think the next few weeks in a hotel would cost your grandchild. And that could be a problem. They've now stolen some of your money. So the way to avoid falling for something like this is pretty simple. One thing that you want to do is, if you get information like this via email, particularly, and it's something that seems particularly dire, you may just want to check in with this person. If this were your grandchild and they contacted you, I think the first thing you probably want to do is, rather than emailing them back with account information or going to your online banking and transferring money, you might want to call them up and say, hey, I just got this email. It seems like it's from you, and it said that a pipe burst. Is everything okay? Just doing that simple check would tell you, well, obviously the pipe has not burst, and everything's all right. Some people get calls like this as well, calls that purport to be from people in the criminal justice system who say that a family member has been incarcerated and needs money for bail, or things like that. And so if you get an email from someone, or from what looks like someone or whatever, that really upsets you, that makes you very sad or very angry or whatever, and then prompts you to make a decision based on that, you want to be mindful of that, and you want to think it through before you really make a decision based on just information that you get via email or that sort of thing. This is related to the importance of evaluating information online. In general, if you find, information online that really, that really seems to confirm your deepest fears, or really seems too good to be true or too bad to be true, or or is just essentially confirms what you already suspected with no caveats, chances are it's false information that you found. And so, because anyone can publish anything online. And so, you can find lots of good information online, but you do want to check your sources as well. And in this type of situation, particularly where money is involved. All right, so that's social engineering. Another type of, actually a similar type of social engineering that you'll see in email from time to time is what's called phishing, Phishing, phishing. Phishing scams are basically designed to give you, to get you to give up, sensitive information like the password for your accounts, for example. So in this particular phishing scheme, excuse me, it's after lunch and the blood is flowing to my stomach right now. So in this particular phishing scheme, what's happened is you've received an email and it says, oh, your Facebook account has been breached. Click on this link to reset your password and make sure that that it's still secure. Or, maybe something like your Facebook account is, or maybe even something that seems more routine, like, we ask users from time to time to reset their password. So click this link to reset your password or whatever. And so, or any other number of things. It could be like something that seems to be just a notification from your Facebook account, or whatever the case may be. But anyway, when you click on that link, what happens is you get to this page. It's an older style, but this looks like it could have been pretty official back in the day. There's the previous Facebook logo. They've changed it a little bit, but that's what it looked like. And of course, all of this looks legit. It looks pretty much like the Facebook login page used to look. But if you were to enter your email address or phone number and your password in these blanks and click login, what's going to happen is you are going to submit that form to someone who's trying to steal your information. And once they have that, they're going to have your email address and the password associated with your Facebook account. If you've reused the password that's associated with your Facebook account on other accounts, then they might also have the password for, say, your email or your online banking account, or any number of other things that places that you might have reused that password. That's why it's important not to reuse passwords, which we'll talk about again a little bit more later on. But for now, I'll just say, if they have your, if you have this, if you're using, or if you were to type in your information here and click login, then they would have your information and they'd be able to sign into your Facebook account at the very least. How could I tell whether this is legit or not? Well, for one thing, unless you're expecting a certain type of email, from from a particular, from a particular service or from a particular person. It's best to avoid, when you can, clicking links in emails that take you to websites, and also downloading attachments, so files that are attached to your to the email, excuse me, unless you know specifically to expect those. But if you find yourself in a situation where you had to click a link in an email and you ended up somewhere like this, there's still a little signal that you can use to make sure that you're in the right place. When you look up here at the top, you'll notice that. See how it says, so it's https://system.confirm.fbsettings-recovery.com/confirmation/system spelled wrong.html. So, problem. The address for Facebook, if you were to type in the address to go to Facebook in your web browser, the address for Facebook is not fbsettings-recovery.com, it's facebook.com. And so if you found yourself on a page like this, there's still a chance you can avoid them getting your Facebook account information, excuse me, just by noticing this part of the thing. What this is called a domain name. So the domain name for a website is going to be essentially the main address of the website. If you think about the address like an apartment complex, for example, then the apartment complex has one address. So it's at 124 Main Street or whatever. So it has one address, but then it has the apartments inside of it. So 124 Main Street, apartment number 7, or whatever the case may be. So website addresses are the same way. They have the main address. So in the case of Facebook, it's facebook.com. In the case of the library's website, it's cals.org, cals.org. In the case of, say, I don't know, YouTube, it's youtube.com, and so forth. If you look at the top and that domain name doesn't match, so something.something, and then it should have, after that, it should basically have a slash immediately after that. So before the slash, and after any other period. So there's only going to be one period in the actual domain name. So this, where it says system.confirm, that's, well, it's called a subdomain, but don't worry about that so much. It's something.something slash and then something else. Whatever's before the slash and around that last period is going to be before the slash is what you're looking for. And most web browsers will do something like this. You'll notice most of this is in gray and this area is in black right here. This text is in black. That's telling you this is the actual domain name for this website. So fbsettings-recovery.com sounds kind of official, but really it's a domain that someone, a website address that someone has bought in order to look officially like Facebook, when actually they're not. So that's what phishing is. Phishing is basically tricking you into typing your login information into a website that the scammers own, so that then they can access your stuff. Another type of scam that you may run into is what we call tech support scams. And there are a couple of different forms that these take. One is over the phone, actually. Sometimes I know I've gotten them before. Probably a lot of other folks have gotten them as well. Sometimes you'll get a call from someone who claims to be from Apple or from Microsoft or from Dell or Toshiba or something, and they say, well, we've noticed that there's a problem with your computer, and we'd like to help you with it, to help keep you safe. And so you know, again, what they're trying to do is stir up an emotion in you, and the emotion in this case is fear. Oh no, my computer's been breached. Like my my bank information might be out there, or they may be able to get in and and pretend to be me to my friends or whatever. So they want you to feel that fear, and then they want you to act on them. So once they tell you, oh, your computer's been breached, they say, but not to worry, we can help you out. We're the tech support department here at Dell. So what we need you to do is to give us remote access to your computer so that we can fix the problem. And so, we also need you to, and of course, there's also a charge for fixing this issue, and it's $125 or whatever. So what they want you to do is they're going to give you they want you to give remote access to the person so that they can so that they can access your computer and fix the problem. And they're going to put on a little show for you and make it look like they're fixing some technology issue. They'll probably open a few windows on your computer that look a little like retro techie, like the command console, and maybe they'll paste some text onto your screen, and make some things happen. And then they'll go, all right, we've got it all resolved. And then they'll take your credit card number. What they've done on your computer is at best nothing, and at worst, possibly broken in and stolen some useful things, or gotten themselves more permanent remote access to your computer. So they've done that, and they've also got your $125 or whatever on your card. So that's what I mean when I say a tech support scam. At best, it's going to cost you money if you were to accept it, and listen to them. At worst, what's going to happen is they're going to get access to your computer and be able to steal your information in other ways. So if somebody calls you and says they're from Dell, you have my permission to just hang up on them, unless there's some reason that you already know Dell is going to be calling you. Dell and Microsoft and Apple, none of those companies are going to contact you if there's a virus on your computer, because that's just not how any of that works. They will, they'll sell you antivirus software, some of them, but they'll provide security updates to help you head off problems before they arise, but they're not going to contact you by phone ever. And if anybody asks you over the phone for a password, don't give it to them. They don't need it. And if they do, then what they need it for is a scam, not to help you in any way. In fact, that's a general rule of thumb. Don't give your password to anyone. They don't need it. Another way that these tech support scams can work is with this kind of thing. So you'll notice I've somehow stumbled into this onto this web page that says, "Warning: your computer may be at risk," and it gives an emergency tech support number to call immediately. And they've given you a little some gibberish here that looks like the name of a fake, that looks like the name of a computer virus. So if you call this number, what you're doing is calling the call center where the scammers work, and then again, they will ask you to give them the ability to connect remotely to your computer. They'll put on a little tech support show for you, and then they'll charge you a couple $100 for it. So again, if you see something like this in your web browser, it's not anything. This is just meant to scare you into making a snap decision of calling the tech support immediately. Okay, so let's continue on and talk about a few other things here. Let's talk about extensions and notifications. So one thing I've noticed sometimes, during when we're doing in-person programming here at the library, I do these weekly, what I call open lab sessions. Something fell down here. An open lab session is basically a time where folks can drop in and ask their technology questions, or if they're having trouble with their computer, I can kind of help them resolve their problems, or if they need to learn how to do some particular technology task, I can help them learn. So it's a really cool, useful thing. What I've noticed a lot of times when folks come in with technology problems is that their web browsers, like Chrome or Firefox or Microsoft Edge. Internet Explorer is another web browser, but if you are using Internet Explorer, I implore you to not do that anymore, because that is a common sense thing that you can do to avoid problems with your computer, is to ditch Internet Explorer for good right this moment if you're using it. Internet Explorer has not been updated for some time, and it is not safe to use on the modern internet. So you should have, your computer should have something like Google Chrome, Firefox, Microsoft Edge, or if you're on an Apple computer, Safari. Chrome is the most popular web browser currently. And one of the things that Chrome and Firefox and Microsoft Edge have in common is the ability to install extensions, or things called extensions or plugins or add-ons, depending on, which web browser you're using. So this particular screenshot here is from Chrome. It says, this site says to continue the work of your browser, you should install the extension. Prevent this page from creating additional dialogues. It's a little checkbox there, and you can click OK or cancel. And then down here it says system alert, add extension in order to keep you in safe browsing. So what's happening here with very bad English is this particular website is trying to trick you into installing one of these extensions. One of these, what they are is additional pieces of software that that add functionality to your web browser. So we're actually going to talk about a couple of extensions later on that I do recommend that are really good. And I have others, for example, an extension that allows me to capture an image of an entire web page, or an extension that allows me to be logged into 2 different accounts on the same website at the same time, or various other things. There's a ton of stuff that you could potentially do. And some of it's quite useful, and even safety enhancing software, but some of it's not. Some of it is not good software at all. It may be something that's trying to spy on you while you browse the internet, feed your information to advertisers, or steal your personal information like passwords and credit card numbers and so forth. So if a website prompts you to install an extension, for one thing, you need to know for sure that the extension is something that you actually need and not just something that they want you to install. Most of the add-ons and extensions and and whatever that they have out there, you don't need. They don't do anything useful for you. And so, so you want to know that it's something, you want to know that it's something that's actually going to be useful to you. You want to know what the function of it is in the first place. In this particular instance, they're so infuriatingly vague. To continue the work of your browser, you should install the extension. Add extension in order to keep you in safe browsing. That's not anything. That doesn't tell you really what the extension does. And so, so in order for me to be, well, you almost couldn't pay me any amount of money to install this extension, whatever it is. But I certainly wouldn't be even tempted to install it unless I knew a lot more about what it exactly is supposed to do for me. And certainly if you visit a website and it says to continue on this website, you should install this extension, then, something happened, something came up, you've got an appointment, you've got to leave this website right now, because that is a website where people are clearly trying to steal your personal information. So don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. When people have come into Open Lab, I've seen tons of extensions installed in people's web browsers because a message comes up and it says, in order to continue, you need to install this extension. And they say, okay, and they install it. And so they've got 6 different ones. And a lot of times they're getting little pop-up notifications with ads in them at random times. And it's a whole situation that needs to be rectified. And sometimes people don't even know that anything's wrong necessarily. They just have all these icons up at the top of their web browser, and they don't really know what they're for. And and so it's it can be a serious problem. I'll show you how to tell if you have some extensions installed that you might want to evaluate whether they're actually useful or not. Let me switch screen shares for just a moment. Actually, I should do one other thing. There we go. Okay. Okay, cool. So here's my web browser. And up here at the top, you'll see the extensions that I have installed. I'm using Firefox, but in Chrome and Microsoft Edge, extension or add-on or whatever icons look exactly or appear in almost exactly the same place, thank goodness. So I'll show you right here in this area where I'm circling. Actually, that one that's like a stack of books is not it. But this area right here, you'll notice I have 3 extension icons right here. This one we'll talk about a little bit later. It's called Bitwarden, and it's a password manager. This one right here is Pushbullet, which is a handy little tool that I use sometimes to send things back and forth between my computer and my phone. And then this one basically allows me to insert symbols that, unusual symbols into text when I need to. So yeah, just up here at the top, you should see the you should see if there are extensions and be able to deal with them. If I wanted to remove an extension, I would right click on it. So click with the right mouse button, or if you're on a laptop, tap with 2 fingers. It's not a double click or a double tap, it's tapping with 2 fingers at the same time. So I'll right click on that, and there's the option to remove it right here. It says remove from toolbar, or actually remove extension. That's the one I need. Firefox calls them extensions. like I said, other web browsers will call them add-ons or whatever. So remove extension. There it is, and you can clear those out. You don't need them most of the time. All right, let's switch the screen share back to PowerPoint. Continue onward. Okay, great. So that's extensions and add-ons. Notifications are another thing where folks run into problems sometimes, I find. Some websites, when you visit them, they will pop up with a little thing that says such and such a website wants to show notifications, and you can choose block or allow. So what this is a a little pop-up box that's what it's asking you for permission to do is show you a little message in the corner of the screen at certain key times. Those of you who use Facebook might be familiar with this. If you have web browser notifications for Facebook turned on, then what'll happen is you'll hear the little ding, and you'll get a little message at the bottom that says so-and-so liked your status, or so-and-so commented on your photo, or whatever. And they're very similar to the notifications you get on your phone that show up at the top in the little notification shade that you swipe down to see, or that or the notifications that show up on your phone's lock screen. So most of the time, well, I guess to be perfectly direct about this, most websites that you visit that ask you to do this you don't need to allow them to do this, and you probably shouldn't. Because most of the time what they're trying to do, if it's a news website or things like that, like maybe they're trying to give you news alerts. Most of the time though, you don't really need those news alerts, and it's just sort of a distraction as you surf around, and get you thinking about whatever's happening in Washington, or whatever airline's plane has crashed, or things like that you typically, while they're important to know about, sometimes you don't necessarily need to know about them right then when they happen. So that's a good scenario for a website that might send you notifications legitimately, but probably isn't gonna but it probably isn't actually going to add that much value for you. A website that might send legitimately useful notifications would be something like your email provider. So if you get, you could get a notification when you receive a new email. Most of us get enough emails that honestly, you probably don't want that either. I certainly don't. I turned it off on my phone too, except for my work email. And then if you get social media sites, if you're really involved in social media, you might want those notifications. Or something to do with work, like if you use an internal messaging service like Microsoft Teams or Slack, you might need those notifications. But probably the majority of websites that want to send you notifications are either going to send you something that's not terribly useful and too much of it, or they're trying to get in there so they can just send you ads. And a lot of times it's pretty frustrating. You open your web browser and you get 2 or 3 little ad notifications in the corner right away. And so I've had folks come into Open Lab many times saying, I'm getting these notifications, like all these ads are popping up every time I just go to check my email. How can I stop this? Here's how you do it. If you get a notification like this from a website, unless it's a website where you really want them to be in touch with you the moment that something happens, when you get a notification like this, you want to click block. You don't want to allow that to happen. Because if you do, you'll get those little notifications all the time. And it'll probably be more of an annoyance than it is a help. So that's extensions and notifications. We're kind of around the halfway mark. So I'll just go ahead and pause for a moment and ask, what questions do y'all have for me before we shift gears a little bit? Okay, cool. If you do think of a question a little later on, it's not too late. Just put it in the chat or the comments for me. And if you think of a question after class is over, you can always email me. So feel free. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit though, and let's talk about passwords. So passwords obviously are a pretty big, important part of our online lives. We use passwords for a lot of different things, and we want to make sure that our passwords are that our passwords are good ones, because they're the door lock of our for our online doors, I guess, if we want to go with that. So they are the one of the most important sort of lines of defense between you and folks who might want to steal your information. So it's important to have good passwords. One extremely key thing to remember about passwords is, for the most part, you shouldn't reuse them. And we're all guilty of this. I've definitely done it as well. So there's no there's no shame there as far as that goes. As humans, we can only remember so much with our brains, and certainly using up all of that bandwidth to store passwords is not practical. So we'll talk about ways to store secure passwords that we don't need to remember a little later on, because most of the passwords that you use, most of the passwords that you create, if you're online enough, are, you only use them like every so often, every few days or every week or so, or every month or so, or once or twice a year in some cases. So you don't want to have a different password for all of those that you then have to remember, because that could get really difficult very quickly. What you want to do instead, but there are certain passwords that you'll probably need to remember for real. One of those, of course, would be the password you use to log onto your computer. Another one might be your email password, because occasionally you might have to access your email on a device other than your regular computer at home or your phone. Or occasionally your phone or your computer at home might get signed out of your email and you may have to sign back in. So things like that, you might have to remember a password for. And so you want to have a password for those types of situations. You want to have a password that's memorable, but you also want to have a password that's secure. By the way, if you're interested in this, some of this material will be repeated a little bit, but if you're interested in digging a little deeper about creating secure passwords, I do have a video on the CAL's YouTube channel that is that talks about creating secure passwords. And let me actually find that, and I'll drop that into the chat as well. There we go. All right. There we go. So I've dropped a link to that video in the chat. It's part of my Rockstar Tech Tips video series that I'm hoping to get back to again before too long. But it's called Secure Passwords You Can Remember. So let's talk about that a little bit. To create a secure password, you want it to be, one thing that you need is for it to be long. So if you have a password like this, now, of course, this is a particularly egregious password because it's not only is it terribly short, but it just starts with A and goes through G in the alphabet. So if someone's trying to get into your account and they are just using a what we call a brute force attack, in other words, where they have a computer trying all sorts of different combinations to see if they can get your password, then this is one of the first things that they're going to try. Other things they might try include password, or password 123, or open sesame, or there are a lot of other things like that people think are really clever, or where they, that are stuff that a lot of people use, unfortunately, because they don't want to have to remember something, they don't want to have to remember something tricky. That's totally understandable, but it also kind of makes you a target. So even if this were a better password that were 7 characters long like this, a character, by the way, is a letter, a number, or a symbol, including the space. The space is a character, although you can't usually use that in passwords. So this one's 7 characters long, 7 letters. If a computer is trying a bunch of different combinations to try and get into your account, on average, that computer is going to take, drum roll, 0.29 milliseconds to crack that password. So they'll be in faster than you can brew a cup of tea. So 7 characters, bad length for a password to be. What if we add another one, 8 characters? Okay, that's better. That's better. On average, a computer that's trying a brute force attack to guess different possible combinations for your password might take, on average, up to 5 hours to crack that password. So, that's better, but it's still not great, because if you start a computer on a task, you can just leave it to do that task. It's not like they have to sit there for 5 hours and click, click, click. They can set it to play around for 5 hours and then come back the next day and, oh, what do you know, we're in. Or whatever. And 5 hours is kind of an average. It's not necessarily that an 8-character password will take 5 hours to crack. It's just that that's probably a good bet for how long it might take. They could crack it in 2 seconds, potentially. But the chances of having your password cracked go quickly, go down a little bit more when you add another character. So at 9 characters, we're looking at 5 days more like in order to crack this password. So that's looking a little more promising. But again, these are just averages. At 10 characters, we're looking at possibly around 4 months. 11 characters, perhaps up to 10 years. 12 characters, perhaps up to 200 years. So if you have a 12-character password, you're doing pretty well. That's going to be pretty secure. Now, of course, computers are always, technology is always improving, which of course means that some of your security measures could potentially work better, but it also means that the people who are trying to get into your stuff are also have access to more sophisticated technology that could do this faster. So these numbers may have changed, and they may change, and these numbers will change in the future if they haven't already. So 12 characters is pretty good. pretty good baseline for how long you want your passwords to be. You also want to use a mix of letters, numbers, and symbols. And there are a couple other things that we'll talk about here. Here's a little rule of thumb that I like to use to make it a little easier to create a password that you can actually remember, but is also secure. What I like to do is use song lyrics. So here's an example of a song lyric. I don't particularly care for this song, but it is a memorable song. It's one that a lot of us know a little bit of. So this is a song lyric. By the way, for anyone who's curious, I've never used the password that I'm about to show you for anything, and I never will, except for demos. And I recommend you don't use it either because, well, now it's online for the world to see. So don't use this password, but do something like this. What I like to do is use song lyrics or to recommend to folks. Sometimes I don't use song lyrics, but I do like to recommend it because song lyrics are very memorable. You know the song already, so it makes it really easy to remember because you already know the song. And it makes it easy to make it long because songs on average have, well, I don't know, they have quite a few words to them. So it's not, so if you take a line from a song, it's going to be long enough for a decent length password just on its own. And it's also not directly related to you. Now, if it's a song that like a famous song that has your name in it, or if it's a song that everybody knows this is your favorite song, don't use that song because, if somebody could find that information out about you relatively easily, then you don't want that. That's going to make it easier for somebody to crack it. So pick a song that you're fine with, and pick a line. And I like to choose a line that has a number in it. So this one mentions the number 1. And that makes it easier here in a sec as I turn this into a password. Okay, so the next step, I'm going to take the word 1 and I'm going to turn it into a number like this. 1 is the loneliest number. Then I'm going to actually cut this down a little bit because this is pretty long for a password. If I had to type this in all the time, I'd be kind of mad about it. So I'm just going to, 1 is the loneliest. That's fine. Next, I'm going to move ahead and I'm going to capitalize a random word that wouldn't normally be capitalized. So that way I have a capital letter in here in addition to lowercase letters like I had before. And finally, I'm going to replace the spaces with a symbol here. So plus, plus, plus instead of my spaces, because again, usually they won't let you use spaces in your passwords, but even if they do, you want some symbols in there, not just spaces. So, and using the spaces in there, since it's already a song lyric, makes it easier because in the known song lyric, there's already a space there. So this right here is a pretty decent password. Let's see, what is this? Like 4, 8, 12, 16. That's 18 characters long, but it's not that hard to type. And it's not that hard to remember since I know the song. One other thing to bear in mind about creating secure passwords in this type of way, passwords that you need to remember and type. We'll talk about the other type, the other kind in a second. But for passwords that you need to remember and type, one other thing to avoid that I haven't mentioned so far is avoid using things that are essentially things that could easily be discovered about you or things that people know about you. For example, your name. That's something very obvious that lots of people know or lots of people could find out. If you use your name and your password, well, it could potentially go very wrong. Maybe also your spouse and your child, don't use those in your passwords, because those are other obvious things that you can that folks can easily find out about you. What's your child's name? What's your spouse's name? That sort of thing. Dates that are important to you, for instance, your birthday, your anniversary, the birth dates of your children, all of those types of things. Well, all of those things are public records, or they're things that folks could find out very easily by looking at your social media. For example, when you wish your child happy birthday, or whatever. The photos of your wedding, if you have those online, or even just birth, death, and marriage records on that are public records. Places, addresses of places that you've lived. All of those things, the names of pets. If you are active on social media at all, you probably posted a picture of your pet and that pet's name. So guess what? Anyone who looks into it is going to have that pet's name. All of those types of things are not good things to use as passcodes, or as passwords. You want to avoid things that people can find out about you, or that they would definitely associate with you. And and that's another reason that a song lyric is really good, because if you choose a song lyric, unless it's like known to be your favorite song or something, you've heard a million songs over your lifetime, and nobody's going to jump to that specific song as what your password would be. So that's passwords. Using secure passwords is super duper important. Okay, let's talk about another really useful security tool, and that is called two-factor authentication, or it's sometimes called two-step verification, or sometimes people mix it up and they call it two-step authentication or two-factor verification. But it's all the same thing. What it is a way to ensure that, or is a way to be extra sure that you are you when you're trying to sign into your stuff. So right here, I have a version of two-step verification or two-factor authentication set up on my Google account. So there's a barcode here. There's an app that's on my phone. I scan that barcode, and then once that's been scanned, I can use the with that app. Then I can use the app. The app will basically generate little codes, usually like 6-digit numbers or something like that. It'll generate these little codes, and the codes will be, and it will prompt me, and whenever I sign in on a new device, into my email or whatever, it will ask me for a code. And so I'll pull out my phone, I'll look in the app, and I will find the code, or I'll look in the app and I'll have a code that I can just type in. It's a little bit of extra work, but but the way this works, so when they call it two-factor authentication, what they're referring to is there are two different factors they're using to verify that you are you. The first factor is the factor that we almost always use on the internet, which is a password. So you use, so you get a, you have your password. We talked about that already. You type it in, you put in your email address to say, I'm logging into my account. And then you put in your password to say, and yes, I'm me. So that's the first factor. The second factor is something that you have with you, essentially, that you would normally have. So, in most cases, it's your phone. They also make little, Sometimes they make little hardware devices that that you either plug into your computer, or they generate a code and you type the code in. But whichever option you choose, sometimes you will, the least secure version of this is the most common one, unfortunately, which is that they text a code to you at your phone number, and you open up the text and you type in the code that was in there. But honestly, even that is better than even that is better than nothing. So it's verifying you based on two factors: something you know, your password, and something you have, your phone. And so two-factor authentication can help a lot, because keeping you because if you have it turned on one of your accounts, then even if someone gets a hold of the password for your account, they still can't get into your stuff, because once they type in the password, they then are confronted with, oh, what's the code that's showing up on your phone right now? And so they can't, well, because they're having an issue with, excuse me. And so even though they got your password, which is unfortunate, they still don't have the two-factor code, and they still can't verify and make it look like you are or they still can't pretend to be you in terms of having the code, because that code only exists on your phone. So that's two-step authentication, or two-factor verification, or whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter. You can call it whatever you want, but definitely, if you have the option, use it. Okay, let's move on to the next thing, and that is talking about a password manager. So password managers, the way that they work is they are a tool. A lot of times you use them as an extension or add-on in your web browser, like what I talked about previously. But you can also install them as an app on your phone, and there are a lot of ways that you can use a password manager. Password managers are really important because you shouldn't reuse your passwords over and over, but also you can't remember all the passwords that you would possibly need if you never reused a password. So password managers take the hassle out of that and make it much easier, honestly, to do what you need to do. So the way it works, the particular one that I use and recommend right now is called Bitwarden. It's a free one, so you don't have to pay anything to get access to it, and it works quite well. On my computer, the way it works is I have the add-on or extension installed in my web browser, and and so whenever I visit a website where I need to log in, I can just click a button and it will log in for me. So for example, let's see. So if, for example, I get, I arrive at Facebook and I want to sign into it, I just click, there's an icon up at the top of the screen that looks pretty much exactly like this. I click on that, and then I click on the account, the Facebook account that I want to sign into. If I had multiple Facebook accounts, no big deal. I can keep multiple sets of login information, and it'll just type in my email address and type in the password. And then all I have to do is click login, and I'm signed into Facebook. What that does for me is a couple of things. Number one, obviously, it's super convenient because I don't have to remember my Facebook password. And because I don't have to remember my Facebook password, I can then use a completely random password. And in fact, pretty much all of your password managers will actually generate a random password for you. So rather than even having to go through the whole process of thinking up a song and changing it into a password and then remembering, well, what did I put instead of spaces? Instead of all that, I can click on my little Bitwarden icon, click where it says generate, and then it will create a random password for me that's just a string of letters, numbers, and symbols. I can paste that in and make sure that that gets saved. And then when I return to the website, and then when I return to that website next time, my password manager already knows the new password, and I never have to remember it. If I need that password later on, I can go back and I can search for it. Or if I'm on somebody else's computer and I need to sign into an account, I can open up the mobile app, the free mobile app that goes with Bitwarden, and I can search for it in there, and then I can type it in on my keyboard. That's a bit more of a hassle, but still, it's not as much of a hassle as having someone break into your online banking. So I definitely encourage password managers. They make things easier and more convenient once you've got them up and running, and they keep you a lot more secure than just having a bunch of passwords that you can remember, and certainly, or keeping them in a little notebook beside your computer. All right, so the last thing, or another extension that I want to talk about just briefly is something called Privacy Badger. There are various other pieces, extensions or add-ons that you can get for your web browser that do something similar to this. I recommend Privacy Badger because it's created by a nonprofit organization called the EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation. They advocate for online privacy and essentially civil rights in digital spaces. It's very cool. They're a great organization, and they create this free tool called Privacy Badger. What it does is a little complicated, so we won't go too deep into the details, but basically what it's going to do is there are ways that various companies that want to sell you, or that want to show you ads or sell you stuff, can sort of track you in different places online. What this Privacy Badger does is it stops a lot of that from happening. It basically just cuts it off so that, and doesn't load certain parts of the page that are designed just to track you. And that is extremely handy because, one, it actually makes your websites load faster because they're not having to download all this extra stuff that's just designed to spy on you. And it also means that you don't have to, and it also means that that you're not being spied on around the internet nearly as much as you normally would be. So that's another free tool I definitely encourage you to use. It's really very, very, very convenient, and it basically stays out of your way most of the time. Like, I don't find it causes problems with very many websites, so definitely recommend that. One last type of tool that I definitely want to put before you is what's called a VPN, or virtual private network. So this is particularly useful for folks who travel a lot, or who might go out and frequently use their computer in public places like coffee shops, or at McDonald's or whatever. If you do a lot, particularly elsewhere, as traveling around, using a VPN is a really good thing to have, because what it does is a lot of those, a lot of places, the library is not one of them, thankfully, but a lot of places, when you use the internet connections that are available to you there, like public Wi-Fi, they'll kind of spy on you and see where you're going. And a lot of times also those networks are not terribly secure, if they're secure at all. And so it would certainly be a risk to transmit passwords, particularly for sensitive stuff like your online banking and so forth. So using a VPN helps to alleviate that. What it does is it basically it sends your computer connects to the servers, the computers of the company that runs the VPN, and then through a secure encrypted kind of channel, and then all of your internet traffic flows through the VPN before it goes out to the rest of the internet. And what that allows you to do is it keeps everything encrypted between your computer and the place that's providing you the internet access, and even the internet service provider that's providing their internet access. So, if the local coffee shop uses Comcast as their internet provider, then not only can the coffee shop not spy on your internet activity, and not only can your fellow coffee drinkers not spy on your internet activity, but even Comcast itself can't see what you're doing on the internet, because all of that's encrypted. It goes through the VPN company, and only then, once it's gone through them, does it go out to other to the website that you're connecting to. This is particularly useful if you're traveling somewhere where maybe the government is not very trustworthy, potentially. And so you can keep your information more secure that way as well. So 3 popular ones are NordVPN, ExpressVPN, and TunnelBear. There are a lot more out there. ExpressVPN is kind of the highest rated one. Last time I checked, their pricing was $12.95 a month, or $99.95 if you do it, if you subscribe annually. It works in the connections that you get are fast and reliable. It works in about 94 countries, and it's very encrypted. NordVPN is a little bit less expensive. Rather than $13 a month, you're looking at $12 a month. Or you can actually pay a little over $100. It says $107.55 for 3 years of access. The servers they have are not quite as fast. They have 62 countries, but you can actually use up to 6 devices at a time, which is pretty cool. And then TunnelBear has actually a free version. So if you're interested in, well, what could a VPN do in general, or how would I make one work? You can use that to try it out. You get 500 megabytes of traffic for free, and then it's $10 a month or $60 for a year. So definitely encourage you to think about that, particularly if you travel or if you use the internet outside your home a lot. That is about it, though. Before we wrap it up, what questions do you have for me? All right, I don't see anything, so I guess we'll wrap it up a little bit early. If you do have questions afterwards, if you think of something later on, feel free to shoot me an email. The email address is digital@cals.org, so digital@cals.org. And I hope to see you next time.